Second, I want to bring in our White House correspondent, Jim Acosta, who's over there at the White House right now. Set the scene for viewers here in the United States and around the world who are just tuning in right now from what we just heard, the main substantive point of the president, Jim.
Well, Wolf, as you were all saying, I think we just saw one of the most emotional moments from President Obama during his presidency when he was wiping tears away as he was talking about those 20 children who were killed in the Newtown tragedy. I think that is a moment we will hold on to when we talk about the presidency of Barack Obama long after he leaves office. And when you talk to people inside the White House, they will say his biggest frustration during his 8 years in office, now almost 8 years in office, is this inability to do anything about mass shootings in this country. And, you know, when you talk about the darkest day in his administration, people in the administration say it was Sandy Hook. And so it was not surprising to see the president have that emotional response at that moment during these remarks here. But Wolf, I mean, just so people understand at home, what the president unveiled today is not a blanket executive order mandating universal background checks across the country. This doesn't even come close to that. You did hear the president say if you're in the business of selling firearms, you will have to get a license and you will have to conduct background checks for your customers. And you do run the risk of prosecution if you don't do that. But at the same time, Wolf, we have to keep this in mind. The president is also calling for more FBI agents, more ATF agents in order to do all of this, upgrading the nation's background check system so it's run 24/7 instead of not 24/7, which is where it is right now. It is sometimes ineffective. Purchasers who go into gun stores are sometimes not getting their background checks completed right away. And so this is an upgrading of the background check system. It's an attempt through enforcement to achieve universal background checks, but it is not a blanket background check order that goes across the country, and it's certainly not a gun grab or some of the other things that you're seeing in social media. It falls far short of that, Wolf.
It does. All right, Jim, stand by. I want to get some more reaction to the president's address. Joining us, our CNN political commentator, the former Obama senior advisor, Dan Pfeiffer. Also joining us, our national security commentator, the former Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers. Dan, you worked closely with the president. You were there during his emotional reaction to Sandy Hook, some of the other gun violence we've seen in the United States. Were you surprised at how emotional he got right now?
No, not at all. I have seen, I was with the president on the day that Sandy Hook happened. I remember how it struck him as it was, I think, struck any parent. So this is, this is very hard for him. And this is why he did this, because there's probably been, if Sandy Hook was, the day of Sandy Hook was the hardest day emotionally, the most frustrating day was the day that the Congress voted down universal background checks after Sandy Hook for the president. And so to be able to take this step today was very important for him, I think, and very important for the country.
And the president was very, very forceful in making the case that something needs to be done to stop the deaths from gun violence. Mike Rogers, listen to this.
Dr. King's words, we need to feel the fierce urgency of now. Because people are dying. And the constant excuses for inaction no longer do. No longer suffice. That's why we're here today. Not to debate the last mass shooting, but to do something to try to prevent the next one.
Mike Rogers, you were a Republican member of the House for a long time. Why is the NRA, the National Rifle Association, so influential, so powerful, and all these other groups that have been formed to try to beat back the NRA, they so far have been so much less successful?
Well, a couple of things on this, Wolf. One of the reasons that the president disappoints, I think, so many Americans is this was an opportunity to bring people together. That inflammatory language, and it's designed to be inflammatory about the gun lobby. I won't question people's motives, but that horrible gun lobby, that is designed, that's language designed to divide Americans. And that's what's so frustrating for me. I was an FBI agent in Chicago, Wolf. I kicked in doors for gangbangers in that city, went after drug dealers in that city, went after fugitives in that city. Nothing that was proposed today will deal with any of that. And so frustration for folks like me that thought, hey, this is a great opportunity for the president to bring people together. There's a bipartisan mental health bill working its way through Congress. They were nowhere included in this. And it's designed that way. That's what's so frustrating. So it's not about the NRA being a strong lobby. Every time the president gives a speech on this, gun sales go up. And so there's a bunch of Americans out there that are very, very concerned about their ability, their Second Amendment rights to use guns lawfully, hunting and other things, protection. And so what you have to do is separate all of that. The president missed this opportunity. He said he wasn't going to be political, this shouldn't be political, and then he attacks Republicans. He said he won't question people's motives, and then he attacks the gun lobby, which, believe me, sends people in Republican districts all over the country absolutely into orbit. Why would you do that on an issue where there is a level of consensus? If he'd have taken 70% of what he has proposed today, and by the way, this won't do a whole lot, but if he said 70%, let's come together, let's stand together on a stage and say we're going to do these things. We're going to hire these FBI officers to do quicker background checks. We're going to engage in this discussion. America would be cheering. We would be moving the ball forward. This was not designed for that. That's why I'm so angry and disappointed at what I saw today from the president.
Let me let Dan Pfeiffer react to that. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, look, I think it would be nice if Mike was right that that there was a way to bring people together on this. He has tried that. The Republican proposal here is not do something, it's do nothing on guns. That they will never touch them. That's the position of the gun lobby, position of just about every member of the Republican leadership, every presidential candidate. And so there's very limited opportunities to do anything. He is doing what he can. And look, this isn't going to stop every mass shooting, not going to save every life, but it will save some. And that is worth doing if you're the president of the United States.
You want to respond, Mike Rogers?
Yeah, sure. It's just absolutely not true. Matter of fact, there was a bipartisan bill on gun closing some of the loopholes, and I think there's a path forward on it, but you actually have to sit in the room. And Dan knows that. This administration is, as a member who tried to work with the administration, incredibly difficult to sit in the room and work it out. And that's what I'm angry about it. I was a law enforcement, as I said, I was a law enforcement guy kicking in those doors. I will tell you, there is a path forward on this, but you have to stop the rhetoric. You have to stop this supercharged rhetoric of being political and condemning people's motives after you've just said you wouldn't do that, and to bring people together. There is about 4 or 5 things the president proposed today I think you could get huge consensus on. Why not start there? Why not go from there and then start working forward and building coalitions on how you might get to another place? But the first thing we have to deal with, Wolf, is this huge mental health issue. What the president proposed was an afterthought, and you saw him shake his finger at people by saying, oh, well, I gave $500 billion to mental health. Well, we don't know what that means, but so now go ahead and get on board. That tells me he put no thought in what is the biggest component to gun violence, or at least one of the biggest. 2/3 of suicides in this particular case, and then the large mass shootings, about 90% of those come from some sort of psychosis, which is being dealt with in a bipartisan bill in Congress. Why not engage in that discussion in this national platform to solve that problem? It didn't happen. To say that Republicans aren't engaged, I think is just wrong, and it's short-sighted, and tells me exactly why we find ourselves in this spot where the president wants a fight on this in a presidential year.
Dan Pfeiffer, go ahead. We're out of time, but quickly, go ahead, Dan.
Well, look, the president has worked on mental health. He will work with Congress on mental health, but he has the power to do something to save lives. It won't be every life, but it'll be some lives. It is his moral responsibility to do that, and that's what he's doing here today. He would be happy to work with Republicans if they would do so in a good faith effort, and they have not done that to date.
A good, solid debate. Dan Pfeiffer, Mike Rogers. Guys, thanks very much. We're going to take a quick break.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.